till I get up. Time is barely on our side.
Hey, what's up guys? Here I have a KX85 behind me. This will be the next bike I'm tearing apart. And I know you guys are probably getting sick of watching me tear apart a bike every week, but that is the nature of the business. But on this one, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. I'll walk you through the entire process of taking it apart and to show the sequence of this bike being torn down. Alright, let's get started. The very first thing I'll do is figure out what year the bike is. So the VIN number is always stamped on the head of the frame here. So I'll Google the VIN number. These Cowies don't have a year stamped anywhere like the Hondas do. So I just gotta Google that number. So it looks like it's a 2001. Good to know. I'll run the bike through a little check process. First, I'll check for loose shock linkage, and then make sure the brakes have adequate pressure. Check for leaks in the shock and fork seals, and then of course, drain the fluids. If the bike's not wanting to start up, I'll test for spark, and then also check out the electronics to make sure they're working properly. To inspect the shock linkage, I'll pull up on the rear of the bike. And you should be able to tell if there's any loose bearings in it. As you can tell, this one's got a ton of slop in it. The movement appears to be coming from the lower shock bearing. So this linkage is pretty much garbage. I'll be tossing this one out. To test the brakes is pretty simple. Just roll the bike and grab the lever. Nothing too complicated. For the shock seal, I'll just push down on the back of the bike, press the shock, and look at the shaft, see if there's any oil rings on it. This one appears to be good to go. I don't see any leaks coming from it. I can see some oil leaking out of these seals here. So these seals are gonna have to be cleaned out or replaced. Before I tear into this thing, I'll need to drain the oil and coolant.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left.
Now that I've got the bike on the scissor lift, it's time to start tearing into this thing. Two things I noticed that are pretty sweet on this bike. Look at the muffler on it. The thing is bent over pretty far. And I'm really jealous of this brake pedal setup here. They have a bolt as the tip. Nice. It's pretty obvious, but I'll start with the bodywork first. So that means pulling off the seat, gas tank, and plastics.
turns to sun rays, and on we'll go through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
perhaps one of the best things about partying out bikes is I get free gas for my lawnmower. And who knows what this gas is like. It's probably old, and of course if it's in a two-stroke, it's mixed. But lawnmower don't care. If there's graphics on the plastics, I'll peel those off.
Turn us to thousands, and we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon. Turn us to thousands, and on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go.
Next up is the silencer, pipe, carburetor, and air box.
Take me away from home. Show me all the places I've never known. And we'll chase the night, erase all of these broken dreams and flight. And we'll
I wonder when the last time this filter was cleaned. As I'm pulling it off the filter cage, it's literally stuck to the cage. All the controls and wiring are coming off next. Up here, we're free. The bike is looking pretty bare at this point. Next up is gonna be pulling the brakes off, as well as the radiator and radiator hoses.
It's time, racing all these broken dreams tonight. And we'll
The whole front end is the next thing to come off the bike. I'll start by removing the front wheel and then the top triple clamp. From there, the forks can be slid out of the bottom triple clamp, which then is removed from the frame. Time to tackle the back end of the bike. This is a good indication someone took great care of this bike. This is the lower shock bearing, just completely destroyed. So that's why the linkage was so loose, as you saw earlier in the video. So for those of you who neglect to grease your linkage bearings, this is what it's going to look like after a few years of abuse. Another example of a poorly maintained bike. Someone let the chain wear through the chain slider and into the swing arm as well. I'm finally to the point to where I can yank the motor out of the frame. Just gotta pull the motor mount bolts out and she'll be out of there. I apologize if the quality is bad. My main camera broke, unfortunately, so I have to use the backup camera for now. The next few things I have to do on this bike are pull the pegs off the frame, remove the Kickstarter shifter and intake manifold from the engine, and then it's onto the wheels. So pulling brake rotors, the sprocket, and dismounting the tires. The hex heads on this rear brake rotor are a really odd size, and I don't have the correct size Allen wrench for it. So in a pinch, I'm gonna use a Torx bit, and these things fit pretty solid in there. So far it's worked on 3 of the 4 bolts. I'll show you how this works here. First I torch it to loosen up the Loctite, and then just pound the hex head or the Torx bit into here. And grab the impact. It should rip it right out. Alrighty, the bike is all torn apart now. Just time to clean everything up. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. I wanna say thank you to everyone for hanging out with me for a few minutes, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Stay tuned for next week. I'll have a video pretty similar to this, but with tearing the motor apart. I will see you guys then. Later.